For those of you guys I've not had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Jason. I'm the community outreach pastor here at Foundation. Last week, we began our first Christmas teaching series. If you weren't here, we walked through the concept of joy and pain and real life and chaos and struggle. We talked about a really interesting story from about when Jesus was 18 months old or so, when a really crazy king decided to do some really atrocious things because he was threatened by the little baby that was called the King of the Jews. And so this guy, Herod, was a little bit unhinged and a little bit just crazy. And so this guy, Herod, actually killed about 18 to 24 little babies under the age of 2 years old. And the crazy part of the story is yes, that was very, ridiculous, atrocious thing to do. But Jesus survived that plan. Jesus survived that plan because an angel let his earthly dad know what was going on. So we talked about that last week. We talked about the fact that Jesus is still Emmanuel, God with us. That Christmas is about comfort and joy, and we sing those things over and over again in Christmas carols and Christmas songs. But for Christmas to be about comfort and joy, that means that life has to be a little bit about pain and suffering. We talked about how important it is to rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. Another way to put that is how important it is to have a family, to have friends, and to have that extended village like a church to rejoice and mourn with. And the last thing we kind of looked at last week was just this simple statement. We tend to focus on what we are living without instead of who we will always be with. And last week I shared with you a little bit about my feelings about holidays. And if you weren't here, to catch you up on probably the most important thing that I said last week is that if you were to rank our staff on a Grinch scale from, probably Robin and Clint that are anti-Grinch, all the way down to me at the bottom, I'm very Grinchy. I don't know another way to explain it, but as I did some more digging this week, I kind of figured out why. I don't know about you guys, but I love holidays that are simple and easy. And you might be thinking, Jason, there's no holiday that is simple and easy. There is. There are some traditions that I love in my family that are simple and easy. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday because Thanksgiving in my family for 4 to 5 generations has been about two things: food. And if you know, like my family, you know what to stay away from and what to eat, right? So I've been going 42 years now, so I know what to stay away from. So it's food and then football. We have a 4-generation deal that's been going on for I don't even know how long. I don't think anybody knows exactly how long this thing's been going on, but it's a full tilt, aggressive, I know it's going to sound crazy, but aggressive two-hand touch football game. And this football game is something that everybody looks forward to. Literally everybody that's been in the presence of this event has actually participated in this event, this football game, at some point in their life. It starts out when you're a little kid, maybe 4, 5, 6 years old, and you're completely annoying and irrelevant in the game. You're just in the way of the premier athletes that are in the game. But you're kind of we make special plays for you, so you get to run the ball, and then they, kind of score a fake touchdown. And then as you get older, you step into this season where you're actually a contributor in this game. I had a 10 to 12 year stretch where me and my cousin Gary were probably the 2 best guys on the field, and we were going nonstop at each other. That season of life has now passed. It is now passed, and in this year's game, I had the privilege of being a captain. Because that just means I'm getting older. And I had a privilege of being a captain, and I had to choose between my 2 boys. So I, of course, chose the freshman quarterback, and I took him to be on my team. And my oldest son, who's a freshman in college, did not like that and proceeded to run over us the rest of the game. And he actually scored the winning touchdown on a running play of all things. And we're still kind of mad about that. But I think we love things that are simple. I don't know about you, but I just kind of get frustrated with the ambiguity of Christmas, right? There's just so much. And when I was a kid, it was like super simple stuff. We would go see Santa at the mall, and we would take a picture, and then we did one or two things, and that was like, I'm going to show my age, but it was before the Polar Express phenomenon and all that stuff that happened. And so, like, it was take a picture with Santa, tell Santa what you want for Christmas, and then you have a family thing on Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day. And then, of course, you went to the church stuff, right? That was it. Like little Jason, that's what Jason had to deal with. But as you get older, things get more ambiguous and things get more frustrating. And there's all of these different movies and different things with Christmas. And there's all the dress-up days at school when you have kids. You have to deal with that. I talked about that last week. And then at my wife's school this week, they had like a dress-up week. That I didn't know was happening. So the teachers were dressing up about like with Christmas things. It was just like permeated our entire Christmas life. It just drives me nuts. And I did some digging this week because I was interested in why that tension exists. I think part of the reason that I have frustration with holidays is because there's so much chaos around them. And it's not like the hustle and bustle chaos that I'm talking about. It's like the holidays have kind of gone away from what they originally were intended to mean. So it's just like these random things that are on our calendar, and they kind of, like Thanksgiving is not about Thanksgiving. I just told you about football and food, right? We don't really sit around the table and talk about what we're grateful for. And Christmas is one of these holidays that has shifted from its original intention to a cultural day of celebration. If you look into the history of Christmas, it's easy to see how it's got to where we are culturally. And for sure, there's some similarities, right? Like there's similarities like with cultural Christmas and like Jesus follower Christmas, right? There's two very different things, but there's some similarities, right? We have gifts, we have food. Those are probably the two favorite things, right? We have gifts and we have food. We also have friends and family, like there's gatherings of people. If you're a part of downtown Newnan at all, like the culture of downtown Newnan, I think this week we became like some like Hallmark thing on Forbes.com or whatever. So Newnan is a big deal Christmas is a big deal for Newnan. And there's parades. Like I didn't like parades. I still don't really like parades, but there's parades that are a big deal. And I remember when I showed up here, moved here for the first time, and I was like, man, there's like, why are there 10,000 people in 20-degree weather chasing after bags of candy canes? This is crazy. But people love their parades. Newnan's a parade town. And so I've been participating in said parade for quite a while now. There's Santa, there's Christmas movies, there's Christmas music. There's some radio stations that start Christmas music like as soon as the turkey is in the refrigerator, right? That Christmas music starts. There's Christmas movie debates, and I'm going to land on this. Like, Die Hard is not a Christmas movie, and I will fight you if you try to explain that. Like, Die Hard it happens around Christmas. Like, Christmas has to be a part of the plot of the movie for it to be a Christmas movie. People understand that. If you do, I guess you're my people. But there's this chaos and just this cluster of things that happens at Christmas that make it just super ambiguous. There's lots of similarities, but there's also lots of differences. There's similarities for Christmas when you're following Jesus, and then there's similarities and differences when it gets wrapped up in all the chaos of the cultural side of Christmas. There's some major differences. In a 2021 study by Lifeway Research, we see a few things that they detail out. And they detail it with the label of Christmas confusion. This study speaks to recent trends developing in the United States focused in and around Christmas, and it begins to give us insight into a Jesus-based Christmas versus a culture-based Christmas. And I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing, but just to give you an overview, this is some of the data that they figured out. 99% of Catholics and 97% of Protestants are most likely to commemorate the day of Jesus' birth. That's not shocking. What is significant and shocking is this thought. Significant majorities of Americans of other religions, 74%, and those with no religious affiliation, 82%, also celebrate Christmas. So the questions should be popping up in your head. Well, what are they celebrating? Like, what are they celebrating? Are they celebrating like the Hallmark side of it? Are they celebrating the Polar Express thing? Are they really, what are they celebrating? And then women, 94% are more likely than men, 89%, to observe this holiday. Scott McConnell, who's the executive director of Lifeway Research, he said this, and I thought this was pretty profound. He said, Americans may celebrate the Christmas holiday in many different ways, but very few skip the Christmas celebration completely. Even many of those who aren't familiar with the story of Jesus' birth find ways to celebrate and observe the holiday. The Pew Research Group did a study in 2017 that I thought was pretty interesting. They said 55% of U.S. adults say that Christmas is celebrate Christmas as a religious holiday, including 46% who see it as more of a religious holiday than a cultural holiday, and then 9% who celebrate Christmas as both a religious and cultural celebration or occasion. In 2013, they did a similar study, and they found higher numbers. So Christmas is becoming less and less of these descriptors over the years. In 2013, 59% of Americans say they celebrated Christmas as a religious holiday, including 51% who saw it as more religious than cultural, and 7% who marked the day as both a religious and cultural holiday. And because I'm a nerd, I looked for more data from Pew Research Center, and they didn't have any. They didn't have any data that I wanted there to be, but I looked for more data with recent trends, and 2017 is the most recent survey that I was able to find where they kind of compared the two things that we're talking about. That should, I think, tell us all we need to know. Christmas has gotten more and more confused the further away we get from this data. 2018 Lifeway Research study said it this way. 65% of Americans said Christmas should be more about Jesus. I would say that's probably true, right? I would say if you were polled or you were asked, that you would probably say the same thing. However, while 2 and 3 may want more Christ in Christmas, most couldn't give you all of the details of Jesus' birth story. Slightly more than 1 in 5 Americans, 22%, say that they could accurately tell the Christmas story found in the Bible from memory. Okay, like I've been a pastor almost 20 years, and I don't know that I could do it completely from memory, so I don't know like the exactness of this study, okay? 31% of U.S. adults say they could tell the story, but they might miss some details or get other things wrong. Another quarter say that they would only give it a quick overview, and 17% said they couldn't tell any of it. Scott McConnell said it this way, says it again. While fictional Christmas stories seem to multiply each year, the biblical account of Jesus' birth is unchanged since it was recorded in the Bible. Yet almost half of Americans think they could not share the Christmas story somewhat accurately from memory. And I thought this was really profound. He said, of all the Christmas programs churches offer in December, possibly the most important is simply reading the biblical account of the Christmas story itself. These studies produce a little bit of tension in me, and I don't know if they produce that tension in you. And the question in my brain that pops up is, when we say Christmas, what do we mean? Like in a room full of people that follow and believe some of the very same things that I follow and believe, what does that mean? Like when we say Christmas, when we say we are following Jesus, not following Christmas, not following the cultural piece of this, what does that actually mean? And maybe the better question that we could wrestle with and that we will wrestle with today is this. Not what does Christmas mean, but who are we celebrating with Christmas? Why do we celebrate at Christmas? What or who should we be celebrating? And then further from that, like, how do we celebrate? What should we be doing in this celebration? What type of celebrating should be happening in this Christmas season? So what's the difference? What's the difference between Christmas for a follower of Jesus and Christmas for a follower of Christmas? Now, I think the answer can be found in the Christmas narratives in Luke chapter 2. So we're going to spend some time in Luke chapter 2 today, but I really think we've got to look at this with a different lens. Because a lot of us, if you've been following Jesus for any length of time, you've heard this story. And so you remember when you were in school, if you've heard a story or you read something before, you've heard it, then you kind of think that you know it, right? But when we read something that's familiar, oftentimes we kind of autopilot past it. And there's some incredibly important details in this chunk of the Christmas story that we are going to look at today that need to be examined for us to understand, hey, am I following Jesus or am I just following some cultural holiday? Starting in verse 8, Luke chapter 2. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. That seems kind of innocent, right? That's a good setting for the beginning of a story. Now, who were these shepherds? Like, that's the first question that pops into my mind. Who were these shepherds and what did they do? What were they responsible for? Because most of us, like literally, I would probably say 99% of us that are in this room or watching online have no clue what a shepherd does. Like we've read the paragraph at school or looked on Google for what a shepherd actually does. But we have not lived that life. We don't know what it's like to be standing outside, probably in the cold, watching sheep wander around, protecting the flocks at night. We don't know what that is. That's not a part of what we do. Ancient shepherds cared for and protected sheep and other animals. These guys were absolutely vital to the community's food, wool, and sacrificial practices. Their key task, there was a lot of them, but to simplify, their key tasks were about keeping the flock fed and grazing in the right spot, defending the flocks from predators like wolves or other people that are trying to steal them. They tended to sick and injured animals almost like a vet. They assisted with births and the flock's well-being. They milked animals and sheared the wool for trade and clothing. The shepherds prevented sheep from straying, and they taught them how to follow. Now, I don't know much about sheep, but everything that I've read about them tells me that they are not very smart animals. They just are not smart animals. So these guys are doing a ton of work to try to get the sheep to obey. And they're often considered of lower status, but their work is absolutely essential for a community to continue. Scholars think that these particular shepherds were potentially non-religious, common, everyday shepherds. Maybe Jewish ethnically, but not in practice. These shepherds were socially looked down on in Jesus' day because the work that they did made them ceremonially unclean. We could go into the Old Testament, but I don't have time to really dig into that. But the work that you did, you were either clean or unclean. And there are certain laws and rules that went with the clean and unclean deal. And so these guys were ostracized a little bit. They were the outside of the gates kind of guys. They were in the field, and the work that they did was not something that other people wanted to be around. That's why they weren't shepherds. That's why the other people in their community let these guys do the work. You know, shepherds were socially looked down upon. They also had a reputation, some of them, for being untrustworthy. They were kind of the lowest of the low. But guys, this is not the first time that God does something incredibly powerful through simple shepherds. David was labeled as a shepherd in 1 Samuel 16, 11 through 13. Abraham in Genesis 12 and 13. Jacob in Genesis 29, verse 9. And Moses in Exodus 3, 1. And with any look at the Old Testament, we can see that those guys are giants in the Old Testament. And their roots, what they started out doing was tending after sheep. Throughout the Old Testament, God used shepherds to care for sheep and then eventually people. Verse 9. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. Yeah, check. I would be terrified too. But the angel said to them, verse 10, do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, Bethlehem, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. Now, the appearance of an angel and the outpouring of God's glory is exactly what terrified the shepherds. Like, I don't know about you, but I've never seen an angel, ever. And I would imagine that it would be incredibly terrifying. Incredibly cool, incredibly memorable, incredibly positive, but also incredibly terrifying. You can, yep, I see some nodding, good. Terrifying. They're in a field, they're with their sheep. Unbeknownst to them, all of this stuff with Jesus is happening at the same time. You know, Jesus is being born and all of that. And then an angel comes from literally nowhere, right? An angel that they've only heard of, that they've never seen, right? Comes from literally nowhere to the least important people in the community. Just like, because imagine how bright and noisy that would be, right? The writer of this passage, Luke, gives us no detail, right? It gives us no detail of the shepherds saying anything to the angel. The angels just see the terror on their face and they go, don't be afraid, guys. Don't be afraid. I got some good news of great joy that will be for all the people. I imagine it was a little more energetic than that, right? But don't worry, guys. Don't be afraid. Don't be in terror. Don't be shaking. Fix your faces because you're about to go do something really, really important. The phrase, do not be afraid, or some phrase similar, happens in the Bible over 300 times. In particular, in this scene, the encounter with the angel, it incited some fear in these guys. So they had to have that instruction of not being afraid. I'm telling you, like, if I ever saw an angel, I would need that same instruction too. This is the same phrase just a chapter before was said by an angel to a guy named Zechariah and a lady named Mary that have very important roles in this narrative as well. They use the phrase good news. And this specific good news is the most incredible good news that has ever been given on our planet. This news is, hey, the Savior of the world has been born today. He's been born in your town, and he's been born to you. He has been born to you. He is the one that you, the lowly shepherds, have been waiting on. This is the kid that's going to change everything for everybody all the time. This is a huge development. Huge. This was the Savior needed to call people who were far from God to God. And he started with guys that nobody wanted to be around. He started with the lowest of the low, with an angel. Like, these guys got the best treatment. He started with people that we're not even sure actually were following him. Catch that. He started with the low of the low, and it was going to cause great joy. This news of Jesus would cause great joy. Remember last week we talked a little bit about joy. This is the birth of the promised Messiah that's going to transcend all things. But they don't know about what it's going to do yet. So this is an announcement of great joy. It's going to cause a lot of great joy, and it's still causing great joy for us today, over 2,000 years later. Great joy for all people. Did you catch the last part of this? All people. It will cause great joy for all people. The Bible Project is a group of folks that I like to watch their videos. They say it this way: Christian joy is a profound decision of faith and hope in the power of Jesus' own life and love. This life and love of Jesus that creates the joy is for all people. So I can understand why these guys are just like, what? What's going on? We get this news for all people? We just know sheep and like us. That's what we know. How are we going to get this news to all the people? And God doubles down on this announcement from the angel based on who the angel is talking to, right? We already talked about that. I think this is one of the things that we get wrong with Christmas today. This is one of those things that we've kind of just clouded with all the craziness of Christmas. This first Christmas and every Christmas after was literally for everyone. Not just our families, not just the people we buy gifts for, not just the people that like you, not just the people that are easy to love. It's for literally everybody. The word all can't mean anything different than all, everybody. And we're serious about this here at Foundation. The You Belong Here movement thing is not just something we say at the end of every gathering. It's not just something that we put on websites. It's not just something that we put on our socials or on t-shirts or hoodies. It is what we try to be about all the time. And the crazy part is this birth announcement is something that all people will need for all of life, but it's not just the birth announcement. It's from cradle to cross to resurrection to the church. And guys, all of this was happening in real time for the shepherds. Like literally real time. Like angel, words that they said, hey, don't be afraid, but we're not gonna stop and get, like, I talked about it more than the time it took for them to experience it. It's incredible. Verse 12. And this will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. Suddenly, a great company of heavenly hosts appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth, peace to whom his favor rests. When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that had happened, which the Lord had told us about. Verse 16, so they hurried off and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in a manger. Verse 17, when they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told to them about this child. Verse 18, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. Verses 15 through 18 in the Message show this urgency just a little bit more. Verse 15 in the Message. As the angel choir withdrew into heaven. Now, like, I don't have time to spend on this angel choir, but like just after they get not afraid, like a football team's worth of angels just show up and start singing in the sky. Okay, so this is kind of a crazy deal. And I don't know if they're like levitating or if there's cables and wires. Like there's no talk of that in Scripture. But the angel choir withdrew to heaven. The shepherds had no more fear at that point. They talked it over and they said, let's get over to Bethlehem as fast as we can and see for ourselves what God has revealed to us. They left running and found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in the manger. Seeing was believing. They told everyone that they had met what the angels had said about this child. All who heard the shepherds were impressed. There was urgency with the shepherds. They immediately decided to visit. They rushed to see Jesus themselves. You know, some scholars say this is somewhere between, they were kind of 1 mile to 2 miles away from where the birth and the manger and all of those things, where all of that happened. And of course, they're not wearing clothes like we're wearing, right? So they're in robes and sandals, and it's probably not easy to run fast in those things. So they're probably not setting world records, but they just start running. Because that's the response. After they get a little huddle, they're like, oh, we got to get over there. We got to see what's going on. We got to see this for ourselves. Immediate. Now, they were urgent. Like, I can't even express like this any more quickly or profoundly. Like, we don't do very much urgently. There are very little that we do urgently in our culture. Like, I'm like the worst at urgency. I'm slow paced when it comes to doing anything of importance even. We're going to be calm. We're going to approach things. Nah, these guys took off in their robes, in their sandals, 2 miles away, and they got there. Then they begin to immediately share the news. Let's say 30 minutes before this, they were scared of the news. They didn't even know the news was going to happen, right? And this altered their life completely. Because before the news was given to them, some of them probably didn't even know if they believed in the news or not, if they believed in what they had been taught was coming. And these guys are like, see, I guess when you see an angel, it's pretty transformative. But they immediately left. They immediately, a mile or two run, and they immediately began to share. Like, I don't know what happened. Like, if they ran to see the baby and they're in their knees by the cradle and they're like, man, I got to go tell my buddy over here. I don't know. Like, I don't know why they would leave Jesus. Like, I'd probably stay there. Like, I don't know. But they decided to go and tell. Their discussions about Jesus with people, with their people, created amazement, and they were impressed by it. They first saw Jesus for themselves and immediately began to share about him wherever they went. Verse 19. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. Verse 20. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, which is just as they had been told. The shepherds spread the message, but they were the only ones to come back and worship Jesus. That's all Luke tells us about. The shepherds were praising God for what they had seen and heard. They obeyed God and trusted him with the results. There was never a doubt. We got to go find that manger. We got to go find that cradle and the feed trough. We got to go find that barn. We got to go find that stable. We got to go. They were certain. You know, growing up, I had teachers that would ask this question. It didn't matter if it was at church or at school. I had teachers that would ask this question, hey, do you see yourself in the story? You know, you read something, you read a chapter book or some sort of narrative, and they're like, hey, do you see yourself in the story? Who would you be? And honestly, I think that's a really poor way to interpret Scripture. But I also think it's a really interesting way of bringing humanity and our current humanity to the story. I would not be a shepherd. I wouldn't be one of those guys. I'm not like knees in the dirt. I'm not like helping sheep give birth. I'm not giving them haircuts. I'm not milking it. I'm not doing any of that. That ain't me. I might be like a tick above the shepherds, but that's not me. I was probably one of those guys that they went and told, and I didn't come see the baby. I had the opportunity to see the King of Kings, and I didn't go. I've often thought about that this week, like, where am I at? And I go back to the question that we asked earlier. How is Christmas different for followers of Jesus versus followers of Christmas? Christmas is different for followers of Jesus because Christmas is about Jesus. That's it. Christmas is about Jesus. And it's not just Christmas is about Jesus. Everything is about Jesus. It's not about Jesus in story form only. It's about Jesus and putting him at the center of our celebration, just like the shepherds did. For followers of Christmas, Jesus doesn't even have to be involved. Just like he wouldn't have been involved for me that first one. Just like the people that the shepherds told did not come back to see them, to see Jesus, to talk to Mary, to visit the stable. You see, for followers of Jesus, all of this stuff is different. For followers of Christmas, this craziness at the end of the year that we do every year, it's just a season. For followers of Christmas, it's just a PTO holiday. For followers of Jesus, it's the start of a new life. It's that new horizon that we sung about earlier. For followers of Jesus, it is the beginning. It is the beginning. For followers of Jesus, especially those of us who have been at it for a little while, it's a heart check. It's tough. You know, honestly, the difference is all about who you worship and how you worship. And when we talk about worship, we talk about celebrating. We talk about what these guys did, what the shepherds did when they were at the manger in the stable next to all the animals and Mary and Joseph. I imagine that they probably dropped to their knees and asked for a fresh start. It was probably in their brain the beginning of something big. Something big, something different, something real, something honest, something life-changing. I guess we could put it another way. Are you willing to celebrate like that with Jesus and for Jesus? Here's the simple truth. What we place priority on in our life is what we worship. What we place priority in our life, or in priority of our life, is what we follow. So maybe the question is not necessarily about worship or Christmas at all. Maybe it's simple. Simple to say, hard to live out. Who are you willing to follow? Because there's a lot out there that we can follow. A lot. Because who or what you worship takes priority in your life. It's not just about singing songs on a Sunday or even praising God in a stable. When you follow Jesus, you stop following yourself. When you follow Jesus, you stop following the culture. When you follow Jesus, you stop worrying about the risk. And I wish I could tell you that it's easy. I can't. And Jesus said it wouldn't be easy. But it's the best thing that I've ever done. Christmas causes us to ask the question, what are we willing to risk? So what are you risking this Christmas? Listen to what the shepherds risked. They left all their sheep in a field. They left their livelihood in a field. Like stupid sheep in a field. We don't know if they came back to them. We don't know if they left. One of the guys was like, hey, I'll stay with the sheep. We don't know that. But what we do know is they risked quite a bit. They also risked people not believing in what they told them about Jesus. And they did it anyway. The shepherds' immediate reaction was to hurry, to run, to see the baby, and they took a huge risk by leaving their livelihood in the field. Is there any time in your life that you've took a risk for Jesus? I remember, I guess about this time, about 8 years ago or so, we were going through something as a family that was a massive risk. And at the time, there were a lot of people in our family and a lot of spiritual people, that elders at other churches and all of that. And we told them that that God had led us to this new horizon, and that we were going to jump into this thing that now we know as Foundation. And it was a massive, massive risk. People in my family telling me that I was making the biggest mistake I've ever made. elders in other churches telling me that we could come crawling back when it didn't work. But I just knew. I knew it's what God wanted. And it's not just about the church, honestly. It's about me following what Jesus wanted for me. Now, it turned out with a lot of other great benefits, friendships, all of those things. There's so many stories. But have we not taken the risk of stepping out in faith and leaving the sheep in the field? I wouldn't know Jesus the way I do now. Things would be very, very different. I love the shepherds, man. They are such a strong example for us. And I think the reason why I love the shepherds is that they're not afraid to get dirty. They're not afraid to put their knees on the ground and stare at the kid in the trough in a stable with animals because they understood it. The message from the angel going to the shepherds was very intentional. The king was in a manger in the dirt, and they were going to be the first ones to follow. They understood what it meant to get dirty. Right before the shepherds' eyes, they went from being people wandering in the darkness to people who had seen a great light. They were symbolic of the people that the prophet Isaiah mentions in chapter 9, verse 2 of Isaiah. It says it this way: the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. It's a new horizon. As we wrap our gathering today, we're going to sing together. We're going to follow the example of the shepherds and worship God, thanking him for sending us, Jesus. And if we have to do it in the dirt, that's where we'll do it. I love these lyrics that we're going to sing because it's almost like they could be sung from the perspective of the shepherds. Listen to these words. In the darkness, we were waiting without hope, without light. Till from heaven you came running, there was mercy in your eyes. To fulfill the law and prophets, to a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. For those in this room that are followers of Jesus, let's reset our priorities just a little bit as we leave today. What do we need to risk to see Jesus today? What do we need to risk to allow Jesus to lead our Christmas season? Now, for those of you that are here that are considering what it would look like for this to be the first Christmas really following Jesus, we'd love to have that conversation with you. That's why we're here. That is 1,000,000% why we exist as a church. If you'd like to have that conversation, or just simply start that conversation with you over text, I'm going to throw a number on the screen, and you can text the word begin to that number. And it goes to all of our staff team, and somebody will start a conversation with you today. It's not necessarily a conversation about baptism, though it might lead to baptism. It's a conversation about what does it look like to begin this Christmas with Jesus. What does that look like? And I think for each of us, as many people as there are in this room and maybe watching online, it's different for everybody. But the thing that's the same for everybody is we got to be urgent. We got to start. We got to do something with it. We might need to run to the stable to look at the king that's sitting in a cradle just above the dirt. No matter what we teach on each week here at Foundation, we close our gathering together with a time of communion. And if you missed it on the way in, we have some volunteers with communion in the back, and they'll take that to you if you need it. But communion is a way that we remember. We remember the day that Jesus died for us. We remember that day where Jesus hung on the cross, and his body was broken, and his blood was shed. But it's my prayer today that we kind of remember not just that, but we remember what it was like, maybe in that stable, maybe in that field, when those shepherds chose to be urgent, to choose Jesus. As the band plays, you can take communion at your seat. And for those of you that are new to church, new to faith, just trying to figure this thing out, this is not something that we want to pressure you to do at all. During this time, it'd be awesome if you just want to reflect or pray, look at the lyrics on the screen, maybe sing along. And we've made prayer a lot more difficult than it is. It's really just thinking thoughts in God's direction. He's going to take care of the hard part. So as we move into the next part of our gathering, we'd love it if you can stand and sing. If you want to, you can sit and sing, take communion, have some time to reflect on what Jesus is working with you on right now.